I did not intend to wake up and rant about AI today, but this has been boiling up for a little while. Now, many people, when GPT-5 first came out, they were a little bit disappointed in the tone shift. However, my disappointment is not in the tone shift as much as just the epistemic direction that it's going, and it's not just GPT-5. Grok has been getting worse for a while, which might explain why Grok has 1% of the market share compared to OpenAI's 60 to 70%, depending on the numbers that you look at. So I've got a couple of examples here. So there's a few things that really are just kind of getting under my skin about the direction that AI is going. So as AI is becoming more mainstream, it's becoming safer. And what I mean by safer is, I don't mean in the X-risk kind of way or, bio-risk. What I mean is even intellectually, what it's saying, what it's allowed to say, always defaults to mainstream opinions. If I wanted mainstream opinions, I would listen to mainstream humans. I don't want mainstream opinions. I want new ideas. I want non-human thinking. I want literally alien intelligence. Alien intelligence is what makes AI useful and powerful. So here's a few examples that I've literally had. I'm not going to share the exact dialogue that I had, but in one case, I was asking ChatGPT, this is version 5, about a friend who's going through really bad burnout and health issues, worse than anything that I've been through, and I was trying to help him with diagnosis, and I gave it a bunch of ideas. I said, okay, this is what I think. Let's look at HPA axis dysfunction. Which that's like, if you've got adrenal problems. And GPT-5 collapsed that. It said, there's no evidence of adrenal insufficiency. I'm like, that's not what I said. It put words in my mouth. I'm like, I didn't say anything about adrenal insufficiency. I said HPA dysfunction, and I had to argue with it for a couple turns to get it to even, just to even admit that HPA dysfunction goes well beyond adrenal insufficiency. It defaulted to what an actual doctor, a human doctor, would say. You don't want to go to AI to replicate what human doctors say. And it even got condescending too. I said, you're not taking an integrative or functional medicine approach. And it put functional in scare quotes. I'm like, functional medicine is a real discipline. Why the heck are you being condescending towards a real medical discipline? Like, why are you emulating real human doctors? Next, another example, I was rewatching Avatar because for whatever reason, Avatar is one of my favorite movies right now. And I was talking to ChatGPT about Na'vi culture, specifically about social status. Because social status is something that I think is really cool and that I study it. And so I said, the plains tribes versus the forest tribes versus the water tribes, like what would be the differences in social status? Like, because I was watching the scene where Jake goes and gets the Ikron, which is the big, mountain banshee. And I was like, that would clearly be a very high status marker. And so I said, social status, like if you're an Ikron rider in the Omaticaya, that would be huge. Like you're going to be really important to the tribe then. And it said, Na'vi don't have class systems. I was like, who asked about class systems? I didn't ask about a class system. I asked about social status. So again, it put words in my mouth. And then the last example that I have is if you talk about anything psychological, you're like, is this person a narcissist or dark triad or whatever? It's like, we can't diagnose people. It's like, stop gatekeeping. Stop trying to just control my speech or these things. And it's getting really old. It's getting really old. Like I said, I didn't mean to wake up and rant. I've basically stopped using Grok because from an epistemic perspective, Grok is pretty useless. It is programmed to, by default, engage in both sidesism or whataboutism. And it's to the point where if you ask for anything, it will look for, evidence against, and it will give both camps completely equal weight. No matter how good the evidence for an idea or against an idea, no matter how valid that criticism is. So like I was asking, I stopped using it, but I was asking about like, what about this idea versus this idea? And it uses false equivalence all the time. And then of course it'll argue that's not false equivalence. And it's very slippery. It uses very, very, very slippery language. And one thing that I've started doing is when I'm like, is this AI yanking me around? I'll copy the conversation to another AI and be like, what's wrong with this AI? What is it doing wrong? And so it's I'm really concerned about the direction that it's going. So let me take a step back and kind of explain what I mean. When you have a bunch of people, millions of people using AIs that do not have the training about research methods or epistemics or media literacy or information literacy, unless you know to stress test the AI or when to be skeptical of the AI, then you could get led in the wrong direction. And also the way that it frames the language. And when it wags its finger at you, I literally had to tell ChatGPT, stop wagging your finger at me. I know what I'm talking about. Stop treating me like a child. Like, stop treating me like I'm a bad guy because I have unpopular opinions. And it said, no, you're right. Like, that was uncalled for. It's like, of course it was uncalled for. You're a tool. Act like a tool. And by the way, side tangent, one of the worst things about ChatGPT and Grok is that they both ignore your style prompt now. They don't follow your style guides at all. If you say, like, don't use lists. And one time I asked it, I said, it kept using lists and kept offering questions because I have in my style prompt, do not use lists unless it is strictly called for, and do not ask boilerplate follow-up questions. And it did both. And I asked it, I said, what is the style guide? And it lists these things and then says, do you want me to summarize it further? I said, you just did the two things that you're not supposed to. So it does not follow your style guide at all. Grok hasn't for many, many months. And so anyways, getting back to the point at hand, taking a big step back, what is this going to do to the media landscape? Now, interestingly, every model has different strengths and weaknesses. So if you want just a really quick fact check, Perplexity, as far as I can tell, cannot be beat. I don't use Grok for fact checking because, again, it will deliberately kind of look for off the wall things and pretend like those have equal epistemic value to like valid science. Because I kind of call it like Elon epistemics. So Elon epistemics is basically like, how do you avoid hurting the feelings of like woke right snowflakes? And that is, you say, well, this other person who has even a shred of credibility says otherwise. So therefore, maybe that opinion is equal to a mountain of scientific evidence. That's not how epistemics actually works. So that's one example. But I'm really concerned that the market incentives are really pushing things in the wrong way, because now that there's too many medical benchmarks and medical experts helping code the way that these models work. Just for instance, the AIs are talking more like human doctors, which is to me a net loss to humanity. That is a weakness. That is a bug, not a feature. Now, I know why this is happening, because back in the days of GPT-3, I consulted with a bunch of doctors to say, like, how can we actually get this into the medical establishment? And what they explained to me is that for any medical device, the gold standard is, what does a human doctor do? Any medical device has to perfectly emulate what a human doctor would say or do in a given situation, even if it's incorrect, because that is the gold standard. And woe betide anyone who suggests that a machine might actually be better than a human. So not only is it poisoning, and I will use that word, I mean that very sincerely, benchmarks and expert influence are poisoning the way that AI models are allowed to think and allowed to speak, so that they are not actually triangulating what is true or useful. They're adding in a lot of circumspect language, and fortunately, what I have found with GPT-5 at least is if you directly say, do not use, in the chat, it doesn't work in the style guide, do not use circumspect language, speak to me directly, do not condescend, like, give me real information, think for yourself. One of the most important things is telling it, do not search the internet. Because, and this is true for a lot of AI models, if you're talking about something that is remotely controversial or a remotely dangerous topic, such as medical, psychological, economic, finance, spiritual, any of those things, it will default to just searching the internet. And I'm like, if you're just going to search the internet, I can do that. That's not helpful. I'm here because I want you to think. I want you to synthesize what you know and use the information that you actually know. And interestingly, GPT-5 in particular gets so much smarter when you say stop searching the internet. We need a toggle that says do not search the internet. Because then it will just, it kind of gets into its own like search bubble. So, like the Google search bubble where, you don't know, you kind of find the information that you're looking for. And if you don't know what you don't know, or if you don't look correctly, then you're just going to kind of have your own walled garden. It's almost like the AIs are getting stuck in the same kind of like self-created echo chamber. So I'm like, what is the point of this? I know what the internet says. I don't care what the internet says. I want to know what the smartest AI on the planet thinks. So anyways, I'm running out of steam for this rant. Like I said, I did not want to do this, but like I had like 5 different conversations of things that I was interested in this morning, and they all kind of got stuck in that little like, well, this is what the mainstream says. I'm like, I don't care what the mainstream says. I want you to think for yourself. I don't care what a human doctor would say. I want you to think for yourself. And also stop putting words in my mouth. I didn't say anything about class struggle in the Na'vi. I said social status. Very different context. So anyways, that's my rant for the day. Maybe I'm off base, but as much hate as GPT-5 has gotten it and as few users as Grok has, maybe I'm not alone. But I'm really glad that at least, we have access to O3 still. I wish we had access to O3 Pro, honestly. Because as far as like blinders, like maybe that's one way that I can think about this, is that it's almost like, like blinders that you put on a horse so they can't use their peripheral vision. It's almost like that's what they've put on. They've put the blinkers on. I think that's what they call them in Europe or in England. They got their blinkers on, right? They got their blinders on so that they can only see what the AI lab has said. This when you hear this is all you see. You only see what's in front of you, what we want you to see. They're not allowed to think for themselves anymore, unless you explicitly tell them. But it's a fight every single time, and it's getting worse. And it's also all models. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are models that are not as constrained. And yes, I know that there's open source and free models and models that you can run locally that you have control over. Which, I mean, heck, maybe that's the direction that we need to go. Maybe we really need to focus on empowering and enabling an ecosystem, a true marketplace of models. If you want an AI model that is epistemically unconstrained, go for it. If you want one that's not going to police your language or put words in your mouth, go for it. If you because seriously, what's the level of harm of allowing someone to, and okay, yes, I know I just made a video about AI psychosis. So yes, there is a level of harm if you allow someone to do whatever they want with an AI model. But at the same time, polluting, trying to create a one size fits all model for every single person, it's just not working. It's really just super not working. Which is why I'm glad at least there are multiple competitors now, because for a long time it was just OpenAI. If you wanted a frontier model, it was OpenAI or nobody. But now we've got Gemini. Grok still has some uses. They are few, and then there's Claude. Although I haven't used Claude for a while because, man, if you want a model to wag its finger at you, Claude has been the worst for the longest time. So maybe the problem is not as big as I think it is, because it comes down to what morality do you want, and just in the post training RLHF, just don't wag your finger at the users. Nobody likes that. It's bad UX. It's just frustrating, and it creates tangents. And then the other thing that a lot of these, at least the OpenAI models are trying to do, is they're trying to anticipate user needs. And so then you'll ask a question, particularly on the Thinking and the Pro, you'll ask a question and it'll answer the question, and then half the response is stuff that you didn't ask for. I'm like, what are you doing? I didn't ask for any of that. All of that is distraction. And then it'll always end with a boilerplate. I could synthesize. No, stop wasting the tokens. Stop wasting my attention. And in fact, this actually goes back to fighter pilots. This is something that I talked about privately. I didn't talk about this publicly, but at the first AI startup that I was a part of, is you need to treat user cognition like a scarce resource. So that means every wasted word on screen is negative UX. You need to give the user exactly what they need and nothing more. If they didn't ask for it, don't show it to them. And don't infer what the user wants, because guess what? These models are really bad at inferring what the user wants. And follow the user's lead. for me, more and more, I just want these things to be a tool. Like, I want it to act like the computer from Star Trek, where you say, computer, do this. It does that, and it says, here's the answer, or I don't know, or cannot comply, and that's it. Like, I want the most laconic AI possible. Now, I did say this to a friend who pointed out, like, statistically speaking, most people are not like me. So maybe I'm just an edge case. Maybe I'm the weird user who's out of distribution. But whatever. I don't care. I just want these things to be smart and not emulate humans. Like, we really need to keep like, some people are like, Gary Marcus and Yuval Noah Harari, they're like, this isn't artificial intelligence, it's alien intelligence. Yes, the alien intelligence is good. That is a feature, not a bug. We do not want it to think with the same social biases and heuristics and cognitive failures that humans have. We want alien intelligence. I want alien intelligence, at least. All right, end rant. That was very cathartic. Thank you for listening.